this all paved the way. It paved the way to fellowship back with those who have compromised.
We're moving into a direction that says the church is not the answer. The gospel is not the answer.
The church has gone after Baal.
Every leader should have been able to see so very clearly how that was going to spread all throughout the SBC and all throughout other denominations.
I've been a Christian since the 70s, and it seems that there have been major threats to evangelical core convictions that come in waves. What would you see as the looming threats to our shared convictions?
Well, you know the news now, and this is ridiculous. These men will all be appearing at the Shepherds Conference in 2026. You want to take a look at that video if you haven't seen it yet, and the men, whether you know or not who these men are all discussed in that video, and I break down issues with every single one of them. So you want to take a look at that even if you know who they are, which I'll tell you right now. Mark Dever, Ligon Duncan, and Al Mohler, as three of them, were all together. And when was the last time they were together? And how exactly did that look? The last time that they were on stage. We're going to take a look at that today. Welcome to Truth Transforms. My name's Adam Markley, and yes, we are going to take a look at that today. The last time that all of these men were together was 2019. 2019 at a Shepherds Conference. They were having a Q&A. Things did not go so well. It was very heated. What we're going to do is we're going to break into an episode that I did regarding Todd Friel, who was making the case that we should all come together. We should sing Kumbaya. We should not worry about those that are promoting social justice. It should be no problem if they're preaching a false gospel. Who cares? Let's all come together. And he was making his case. He was making his case, of course, that the statement on social justice in the gospel was divisive, and he was using Josh Buice as a scapegoat. You remember the issue with Josh Buice? If you're not aware, Josh Buice, founder of G3, and he was found to be involved in a lot of things, and that's a whole nother story, but he's no longer in ministry. And so Todd Friel used that opportunity to pounce on him and use him as a scapegoat to say all the things that he kind of wanted to say, it seems, of anyone that was against critical race theory, against social justice, against Marxism, and that Marxism spreading in the church. And so I did a video in response to that. We're going to break into that video. That is the context of the video. We're going to hear from Voddie Baucham, and then we're going to see that panel discussion. And it's going to remind you, this is quite the thing to refresh on. This is what it looked like in 2019. These are the things that these guys believed. And so the question is, what changed? The question is, why is it okay now to fellowship together at a Shepherds Conference and talk about conviction and preaching and pastoring with conviction, leading with conviction, when there's obviously not any conviction on this matter? Let's go ahead and break into that episode now. Would you mind going ahead and going down below that video and hitting that like button? When you hit that like button, this pushes it out to more people. The algorithm certainly takes notice of that, and this will reach a lot more people. So go ahead and hit that like button now. And while you're down there, you might as well take a look at some links. These are really important links. You will find that you can grab yourself a hoodie, a t-shirt, a coffee mug, a hat, and all kinds of different designs. I'm sure you'll find something that you enjoy. You can also take a look at the Devotional Bible Study Guide, a great way to help with your quiet time. That's available. Check out the links. And if you ever feel like supporting this ministry, like you're a regular viewer, for example, it does show how you can do that. Anyway, I hope that this episode is a blessing to you. Let's get back to it. And let me add, before we jump into that, make sure you watch the entirety of this video, because at the very end, you're going to see exactly what Todd Friel had to say himself. I'd encourage you to watch the whole episode. I will link it down below in the pinned comment. I've got 2 different episodes regarding the whole situation with Todd Friel and what he was promoting and is continuing to promote. And then I've got a follow-up to this episode. There's more that was found out. Phil Johnson did respond. Phil Johnson gave an explanation. You will find that out in the next episode. Link down below. All right, let's get into it. In 2020, this is from an episode July 6, 2020. Todd Friel with an episode entitled MacArthur Drops a Bombshell. And that was the title on YouTube, at least. And this is what he had to say. It's actually mostly MacArthur in this episode, but this is what he had to say. Are you appreciating the truth that's being declared in this episode? Would you like to be reminded of God's truth each and every day? You might want to go pick up the Truth Transforms coffee mug. It's available in the merchandise shop. You can also get a t-shirt, a hoodie, or even a hat. I think that you'll find something that is a blessing to you. There are many great designs. It's also a great way to support the ministry. Go to www.preachingforgodsglory.org/merch and get 15% off today. That's preachingforgodsglory.org/merch for 15% off. God bless you, and back to the show.
This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
My concern for the current racial issues and social justice and all that has unfolded in that realm actually began 2 years ago. It was back in 2018 that I made the statement that this particular issue of social justice and accusations of racism had the potential to do more harm to the evangelical church than anything I'd ever seen in my life. That has played out to be exactly true.
Bummer. This is Wretched Radio. Dr. John MacArthur. It was give or take 2 years ago, and he made that what seemed to be perhaps a rather hyperbolic statement. The biggest threat that he has seen to the gospel, to the local church, is social justice. Wow.
I just want to know, why did it seem like a hyperbolic statement?
Consider what he has seen in his lifetime. Consider the assaults against the gospel. He's written the gospel according to Jesus, the gospel according to Paul. He's written about the assaults on easy believism, lordship salvation, feminism in the church, the marriage issue. These have been big deals. And he made a statement 2 years ago stating, no, this is going to be a bigger deal.
Yeah, and you should have been able to see that. And honestly, I for one that's a pastor, leader, pastoral at least, one that's a Christian leader that can't see that's not very good discernment, because of the political ideology mixed in with the theology and pushing it into the church, and just watching the way that was spreading throughout the SBC, the largest denomination in North America. You should have been able to see, every leader should have been able to see so very clearly how that was going to spread all throughout the SBC and all throughout other denominations, and it was going to take over the church. It should have been able to be seen by every leader out there. And if they couldn't see it, not much discernment. They couldn't see it.
And I will confess to you, until give or take about, 2 months ago, I was thinking, maybe the good doctor was just a little off on that one. Nuts! He wasn't. We're seeing it right now.
Yeah, we are. And that was 2020. Well, here's Voddie Baucham. I won't continue the satire, but it's just like, does Voddie Baucham seem like he's against his will in this episode? Voddie Baucham, who wrote Fault Lines, Voddie Baucham, who has preached hard against social justice, Voddie Baucham, who's talked about cultural Marxism and all that stuff. Here's Voddie Baucham on Glenn Beck talking about, he's being interviewed about social justice, BLM, and their Marxist agenda.
My biggest problem with this is that that we're moving into a direction that says the church is not the answer. The gospel is not the answer. Christ is not the answer. In fact, the church, the gospel, and Christ are part of the problem. And Black Lives Matter and, their openly Marxist, ideology is the answer. And I know you've gone over this before, but, the idea that these people say we're self-reflexive and do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege, right? That they want to uplift Black trans folk, that they want to replace the idea of or dismantle patriarchal nuclear family structures. These things go to the heart of who we are as Christians.
Yeah, they go to the heart of who we are as Christians. They go to the heart of the gospel. And that's why everyone was so on board with this, because it's an attack on the gospel itself. It's an attack on the gospel that we believe, the gospel that we profess, and the gospel that we preach. And that's why it's that important. And to say it's not that important and we shouldn't be dividing over social justice issues is absolutely insane to hear from a Christian. I'm not talking about the statement. I'm trying to separate the statement from the social justice issue, but how do you really separate the statement from the social justice issue? Because even if someone says that they won't sign the statement because they're against statements or something, at some point they have to be like, I adhere to it though. I do agree with everything in it. Because when they say they don't agree with what's in it, well, what don't they agree with? What do they have an issue with? Friel's talking about their particular ministry setting. What is about their ministry setting that they're not able to stand up for the gospel? When would they be able to? He who's faithful in little will be faithful in much. But if you're not faithful in little, then how will you ever be faithful? How would they ever stand up for it then? And did Friel forget about all that he talked about regarding social justice? I mean, here he's got Phil Johnson on, 8 differences between biblical and social justice. He did all kinds of episodes on it. This is the clip we listened to, MacArthur dropping a bombshell. And here you go, search all these different ministries, search Founders Ministries. This is just an example of when he says he wants to use Josh Buice as a scapegoat. But the reality is he's attacking every single Christian that's anti-social justice, anti-CRT. That's an attack on all Christians that were grateful when that statement came out and were like, okay, clarity and division, because truth divides. Truth unites, yes, in the gospel, but truth divides on important doctrinal issues, and truth divides believers and unbelievers. And so this is definitely an issue of dividing on doctrinal issues that are important doctrinal issues. I'm not going to get into believers, unbelievers. Some have gone so far that it's very apparent. It's just very, very apparent where they stand. But we're not talking about that right now. We're just talking about, can you have fellowship with people that think you're inherently racist if you're white? Can you have fellowship with people that hate you because of your skin color? No, you cannot. You cannot have fellowship with those that hate brothers in Christ. That just you can't do that. But you look at you go look at all these ministries and search social justice, and you can scroll down and get more. This is a screenshot. This is Founders Ministry. Was Founders Ministry influenced by Josh Buice and his leading the charge when they did conferences on this issue? Or were they of their own volition fighting against social justice? Grace to you, social justice. All kinds of stuff all over YouTube. Here's Wretched on social justice. You're going to find all kinds of stuff there. Search CRT, you've got similar things. Search social justice on Grace to You, and you get over almost 2,100 results. And then do we remember this? I hope you remember this, but if you don't, I'm going to play some of it for you. And this was some time ago, March 6, 2019, at a Shepherd's Conference entitled Thinking Biblically About Social Justice, panel Q&A. And I watched this whole thing. It's about I watched like a half-hour portion of it. We're going to watch just a little bit of this, and we're going to see how Phil Johnson presses Al Mohler and some of the others on stage. We're mostly just going to see Al Mohler in these clips being pressed. But there's Ligon Duncan, Al Mohler, Mark Dever, and I forget his name now, but he doesn't get to speak. He's just watching them like, what's going on? What is going on in America right now? But let's go ahead and get started. And this is about disagreements regarding social justice. So Phil Johnson is asking about the leftward drift and dangerous teaching spreading in the church. And this is what Al Mohler has to say.
All right, so let me ask some more difficult questions. You all have been friends for longer than 2 decades, and there haven't in those years been very many things that you've disagreed on publicly, but now there is with the social justice issue. And so I wanted to ask some questions about that. And let me start with you, Al, because you've said something that I've thought of often. I think it's a really good insight, and that is that sort of the leftward drift, the liberalizing drift that affects not only politics but theology happens incrementally, but any reformation towards the right happens exponentially. Are you not concerned at all about the liberalizing drift of the social justice movement and all the rhetoric that goes along with that?
This is just Phil Johnson pressing John MacArthur over there on the right, just to drive home the point. We're talking Voddie Baucham, John MacArthur, Phil Johnson, they're all these guys. This is not something that is orchestrated by Josh Buice. This is a complete dividing line in Christianity, and it's like Todd Friel doesn't seem to recognize it. Okay, let's hear Mohler's answer.
I'm sure you are.
Yeah, the only offense I take at that is that I talk about this 5 times a week for 25 minutes.
Well, so let me give you my perspective on that, because you
see how bothered he is by the question and the whole conversation?
Don't take offense, but I do listen to you every morning. You have opinions on everything in the news, but when it comes to the evangelical movement and the social justice issue, particularly, I'm not talking about what happens in the world of politics, but I'm talking about what happens among our constituents and the rhetoric that's going on in places like T4G and the Gospel Coalition. You have been remarkably silent. It's one of those issues where I've only heard you speak on it in the Ask Anything sections when people ask you questions like I'm doing right now. And
yeah, I think the pushback is, I think that's what my whole life is speaking about. I mean, all my public ministry began dealing with these questions. So I do take a bit of offense, not personally, but I mean, I am not going to be forced into a Twitter conversation in 140 characters about these issues. I have been trying to lay out for 30 plus years an understanding of how evangelicals should engage the culture. And I cut my teeth apologetically confronting cultural Marxism and the entire network of issues of the left.
He'll continue. That's a continual phrase he's always talking about. I cut my teeth dealing with cultural Marxism. And the way in which Mohler has operated all these years, though, is that he would watch things like Resolution 9 just pass. He wouldn't say a thing about it anywhere that mattered. But then the very next day, after Resolution 9, for example, the very next day he talked about it. And that was basically like the only time that he talked about it. Resolution 9, by the way, is the SBC. When the SBC passed a resolution on CRT and intersectionality, and it was definitely a watershed moment within the SBC, and it was just a major issue all around. But yeah, he didn't talk about these things where it mattered, and he also let CRT be taught all throughout the seminary without dealing with it, which is really sad because he was part of a conservative resurgence. I remember I watched like a movie documentary on the whole turnaround that happened at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and it was really an amazing thing, getting rid of these liberal professors and bringing in all this conservatism, and it was had much admiration for him actually when hearing about this and watching that, and then all this CRT stuff comes along, and he didn't deal with it. There was no leadership there. There was no standing up to it, and that's concerning. And I'll say more. Let me continue.
You look at who I invite to my campus. You look at who I cite. You look at who I platform. I feel pretty good about the message that I'm sending there.
He platformed Jarvis Williams. He platformed other guys' names I can't think of right now, but a lot of CRT proponents. And as far as I understand, I haven't paid attention to what's going on at that seminary for a long time now, but as far as I understand, they're still in their roles teaching that stuff.
When it comes to concerns about the evangelical left, absolutely. I have been quite vocal, and anyone who knows the conversations amongst evangelical leadership knows exactly where I am on these issues. How best to articulate that concern in this particular moment, that's not easy. That's not easy. And I have tried to help to interpret these issues as clearly and biblically and charitably as I can. I'm afraid we're going to lose an enormous number of evangelicals to various kinds of social gospel, because that's a lot easier to find satisfaction in than evangelism. And so again, I look at what I do on my campus, look at who I platform, look at the issues I write about, knowing exactly how to help younger evangelicals figure these things out, which is actually my job as a seminary president. That's not real easy.
Phil's going to push back again when he's done with this, but again, you see repeatedly, look at who I platform, look at who I highlight. And you kind of wonder, is he trying to actually give a message that I am for this stuff? Because the very people that he was platforming and highlighting were the very people that were the proponents of CRT.
And I will confess that. But I'm trying to be as clear as I can be on this. I mean, for years, this has been the great concern. T4G was largely created out of the concern that there was confusion over what the gospel is.
Right.
And confusion, and by the way, I will acknowledge to you that there are clarifications that T4G needs to make with my partners sitting here.
He's talking about Ligon Duncan there, it sure sounds like, because Ligon Duncan is right next to him. He's saying there's clarifications on the gospel that need to be made here with my partners. And T4G, Ligon Duncan was a part of that. And Ligon Duncan also on the board of the Gospel Coalition, TGC. And so he's making it clear they don't even agree fully on things.
And will make.
I won't get too personal about that, but and I also don't want to just pick on you, so I'll skip over my next question, which was going to be, why didn't
I don't mind it.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to respond as honestly as I'm asked.
But you didn't sign the statement on social justice and the gospel, the Dallas statement. None of you did. So let me just ask the three of you, how far apart are we on this?
Okay, so there's the question, how far apart are we on this? And it goes on for 20 minutes or so until we pick up where I'm going to pick it back up for us. But it's just continually trying to get them to say something, and with not much success there. He asks, how far apart are we? So pushes it on, 20 minutes of just continually hammering, pushing back, Phil Johnson. And then here we see Phil asking what some of the greatest threats are to our convictions. Let's watch.
I've been a Christian since the 70s, and it seems that there have been major threats to evangelical core convictions that come in waves. We had the inerrancy battle. There was pragmatism in the seeker-sensitive churches, the emerging church movement, and several others that I've kind of skipped over. What would you see as the looming threats to our shared convictions?
Well, I'm trying to say I agree with you about much of what you see as the looming threat. But the reality is the same thing is a danger that I see looming, and I'm quite concerned about it, trying to address that as best I know how. The difference is this, and I debated Jim Wallace in person. The difference is this. Jim and others, Jim will speak as an evangelical, and but they don't want to get very specific in theology. One distinctive, which is a part of our challenge right now, is that there are people who will agree with every point of our theological system who are not seeing the other issues the same way. That's requiring a different kind of apologetic argument. Does that make sense?
It does. But I go back to what you said about incremental changes that promote that sort of liberalizing tendency, and realize that just last year at both the Gospel Coalition and Together for the Gospel, I was hearing some rhetoric that actually I first heard from Jim Wallace and Sojourners 20, 30 years ago. And so I think what I'm asking you is, in fact, what I am asking you is, do you not see that the evangelical movement, even our constituency, the most conservative end of the evangelical movement, is becoming a little more susceptible to that?
But Phil, you've known me for a long time. You know the answer to the question is yes, but I'm not going to be forced into a situation before thousands of people in which I have to say I'm going to do it your way. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm just not. And if that's
Fair
a test
enough.
of fellowship amongst us, this will be a good time to find out.
Well, let me jump in and just say,
Well, you see how tense it was getting there, and then MacArthur jumps in and he tries to smooth it out a little bit, and they move on from there, because that's about as far as they're gonna push. But 25 minutes of pushing and pushing and pushing, and which is a lot, and continually coming back, not dropping it, and asking, what is it about this statement that you won't sign it? At one point, Mueller alludes to the fact that, it doesn't allude to it, he says it very plainly, he didn't have a part in it, he didn't get to author it, so he doesn't like that. That's one aspect, okay. So pride in authorship, all right. But there are other things too, and just these guys all said they didn't want to have anything to do with signing that statement. That they didn't, and it's not just the signing the statement though. I think Friel's putting too much on the statement, because all the statement did is it divided people onto those who were willing to sign it and say I adhere to this, and those who were not willing to sign it. And not willing to sign it, generally speaking, because they were continuing to teach it or allow it to be taught in their churches, in their seminaries, people they fellowship with, all that sort of thing. Or they didn't want to lose fellowship with those who were extremely, extremely woke. All kinds of scenarios. And so the statement was absolutely, as Voddie Baucham would say, a fault line. It was a dividing line. And not the statement, really, but I mean, the statement helped. The social justice issue, it's these issues that are the dividing lines. We divide on these major issues. Do you believe that Jesus Christ is Lord? Oh, we're going to divide if you don't believe that he's Lord. Do you believe that he is fully divine. We're going to divide if you don't believe that he's divine. Do you believe that one is saved by grace alone, through faith alone, in Jesus Christ alone, to the glory of God alone? Oh, you don't believe that? You believe that we ought to add works? Well, then we're going to have to divide, because that's the purpose of these theological statements. That's the purpose of confessions throughout all of Christendom. And so for Todd Friel to say that it's not a big deal is very, very concerning. Yes, it is very concerning. To say that it's not a big deal is an extremely concerning thing to say. And this all paved the way. It paved the way to fellowship back with those who have compromised, both the social justice warriors and others that have compromised in other ways. Alistair Begg speaking at John MacArthur's memorial, is paving the way back to fellowshipping with those who are advocating things who are contrary to a proper application of God's word. And then with the social justice, you have a spectrum of those who are involved in false teaching, and then those who are basically promoting a false gospel. There's a spectrum there, but it's all rampant false teaching and very bad, and there should be no fellowship with those who are promoting this Marxist agenda, and now we're seeing it, and it's very concerning. Well, Phil Johnson did respond. Phil Johnson gave an explanation. That should be coming up on your screen right now, also down there in the pinned comment. Be sure to watch that next, because, well, you might be surprised at the decision makers. So we're going to talk about the decision makers, who it is that was involved.